Welcome everybody to today's project, the FV432. The FV432 is the classic APC for the British during the Cold War era. Now I'm painting this up because I'm going to be doing a 28mm skirmish Cold War game, and it's going to be British versus the Soviets. This model is a 3D print available from bobmac3d.com. It was originally from our British Army of the Rhine Kickstarter, but now you can get it directly from our store. I'll put the links in the show notes below. The crew figure you see is from Flank March Miniatures, which has created some beautiful British Army of the Rhine figures for 3D printing. I'll also have a link for that down in the show notes so you can check out their Kickstarter. I'll make a quick note too that these miniatures are also available cast in metal from Full Metal Miniatures. Okay, so let's jump in and get started, but before we do, I'd like you to please subscribe to the channel, like the video, it really helps us out. Now let's get going. I've listed out all the steps I've taken to paint the FV432 so that you can easily follow along. I also have some pictures of some of the key products I'm using. It includes a dark wash, masking putty, and the NATO color set, all three of those from Ammo of Mig. I'll put links to the products in the show notes for those items. Now, I don't have painting the track commander in this video, but I will put a link in the show notes for a painting of the British Army of the Rhine done by Sonic Sledgehammer. It's a great video, shows you how you can paint this type of figure in that DPM camouflage quite easily. The first step, priming, I don't show because I figure it's an easy step to do. So let's get started with the pre-shade step. In this step, I load my airbrush up with some black paint. Doesn't matter what black paint you use, just some kind of black paint. And then I start spraying the model in all of the areas where there should be shadow. This turns out to be all the cracks and crevices, joints in the armor. Anytime two plates of armor meet each other, hatches of doors, engine, grills, anything that I can pick out to give it this pre-shade treatment to helps. The goal of this stage is to add depth to the color. Because armored vehicles are typically a majority of a green or a brown or something simple, you really need to add some depth and character to it so it looks good. Also during the pre-shade step, I paint the tracks completely black. Both sides, under the wheels, I want to cover up all of the primer with black. This will make it easy to paint the road wheels later on and then wash it with some track wash and be done with the tracks. The base color goes on next, and this is the base NATO green. When I put this on, I do it in light coats. I don't completely soak the model with the color. I do it lightly, and I'll go back over the model a couple of times. This gives me control so that I'm not completely covering up all of the pre-shading. I want some of the pre-shading to show through, blend through. Hopefully you'll see that at the end of this step when I show you the model completed, but taking your time, going through lightly and then going over lightly again to build up your color is the best way to approach this, and it gives you the best results. And here it is done. Hopefully you can see the shading coming through the base layer. And remember, we did the tracks in the pre-shading stage. Don't forget to hit the road wheels at this stage. It just takes a moment to hit each one of the road wheels with a little bit of paint. I try not to get out of the center of the road wheel, but if I do, I don't worry about it. I'm going to cover it up with some track wash and other stuff later. In the next stage here, I add some yellow to the green. The goal of this is to brighten the green up so that I can highlight the core model. I will go over and spray any kind of panel that I think would be exposed to the sun. The front panel, the side panel, the top of the hatches, anything that would be high on the vehicle, I'm going to hit with this highlighted green color. Again, I am trying to add depth to the model, some visual interest into it rather than just a plain green color. And doing a highlight combined with the pre-shading is a fairly quick recipe to get some nice depth on the model. After I've done the first layer of a lighter green, I'm going to do one more layer of even a lighter green. I'm going to add more yellow and a little bit of white to the green now so that I have even a higher highlight. So theoretically, my model has a pre-shade, base color, a highlight layer, and then a second highlight layer. This gives me all the depth I need to make a model that I put on the game table that really looks nice. Now here again, I am going to pick out all of the spaces, flat spaces that are exposed to the sun that need some more highlighting. I'm not going to do as much as I did on the previous layer, so it gives a layered effect for the highlights. So mainly the top of the hatches, the top of the armor, the top of the sides, and definitely the front slope. Here at the end of the process, you can see how it's going. Don't forget to hit the tracks, the wheels, with all the little highlights so that it matches the rest of the vehicle. And now we're ready to use the masking putty and do the first stage of the camouflage. The masking putty is kind of like silly putty, a stretchy, weird kind of rubbery plastic that you can conform to whatever you want to. It makes a great masking medium for doing airbrushing. And all you want to do here is figure out where you want your black stripes to be. And on the FV432, I want them going up the sides and then breaking up some over the top. The FV series, or really most British vehicles in the British Army of the Rhine, had the black stripes, but they weren't truly stripes. They didn't stripe the machines like a Tiger. They were connected in the top and they moved around some. So don't just do stripes on your vehicles. Make sure they have some kind of connecting pattern to them. Okay, so I'm using the putty here and I'm masking off where I don't want paint to be. Right, so when I spray this over, I'll remove the putty. We'll see the green where the putty is, black where the putty is not. Take your time. Use the end of a paintbrush to push it into the model where it might be coming off. You have a little bit of time to work with this stuff. The quicker you are with it, the better, but don't rush. I use the end of a paintbrush to move around little details and little pieces of the masking putty to make it look exactly how I want it to. Once I'm done, I am basically ready to paint the black color. In this step, I load my paintbrush up with the NATO black from the NATO set. And I like NATO black because it isn't a true black. It's got a little hint of perhaps gray in it, maybe a little bluish gray. So it makes it nice. It's not a strong, dark, over demanding black. It's a little toned down. Now you'll see in the end of this step, after I paint all of the stripes, the NATO black, I go in and put a little gray into that black, and I'll go over the stripes again, highlighting, focusing in the center of the stripe to give it some more depth. This is essential in making the black stripes look good. Otherwise, they stand out a little too black, a little too bleak and dark, and they don't quite fit well. They don't look realistic. But adding that gray into it and then highlighting the black stripes really makes it work. Here you can see in my paint cup on the airbrush that I've added gray to the black, and I am going through and highlighting the black stripes. This is what I was talking about to make it give some realism and some a nice effect to it. We'll see how that turns out in a minute. Now for the best part of the process, and that's removing the putty. It's a lot of fun to remove and see the camouflage texture pattern that you ended up with. Just be careful removing the putty. Do it gently. You don't want to pull something off your model or smear some paint or do anything like that. And it's pretty fun. You'll see here how it looks when the putty is completely removed. The next step is painting the details. I do this to every model I do, but I pick out any kind of details that have a different color than the base color, the base black or green. Here the FV432 has a couple of shovels next to the driver's compartment. I will make sure I paint those because at least it gives it some kind of contrasting color to the rest of the vehicle. Other than that, it doesn't have a lot of details. And that's what I like about the versions of these models that are stowed, because in stowed versions, there's a lot more to paint. Whether they're extra tarps or bags or what have you, there's just more stuff to stand out on the vehicle. Once the details have been painted, this is the time I do my pin wash. And in this case, I'm using a dark wash that I mentioned earlier in the video, and I'm going to pin wash the model wherever I think it's necessary. And where that is basically is any time that you have crevices or joints or any place where you have a lot of greebles on the tank, you're going to want to be able to hit that with the pin wash. The pin wash is an enamel, so before I used it, I sprayed the entire model with a gloss sealer, just basically a gloss coat. The glossiness helps the pin wash run into the cracks and crevices because I don't want that pin wash to go on any normal flat surface, just in the crevices. And so that gloss really helps it flow that direction. And in the next step, I'll clean up the pin wash and we'll see how it turned out. So here towards the end of the pin wash, you can see how much I did. There is a lot of details, a lot of greebles on the FV432. Also, don't miss the tracks. And the only part of the tracks you should be doing at this point are the wheels themselves. And the detail of the wheels are nice. They have all kinds of bolts and rims and things like that. And you want to do the dark wash on those as well. Now that the pin wash is done, I let it sit for an hour. This is so that a lot of the pin wash will dry and evaporate, but it's still pliable, which means I can come back in after that hour, put a little bit of thinner onto my brush, dry the brush off so it's fairly dry, and then wipe away any excess wash that got somewhere that I didn't want it to get. So any place that looks like it pooled or has marks on there that look like stains and it doesn't look natural, I just clean up and I just touch it up. It's like having a magic eraser to clean up your pin wash. This is a pretty quick step and it really makes the model look good. The last thing I'm going to do to this model after I cleaned up the pin wash is to do a track wash. So I've painted the tracks completely black. I then hit the wheels every time I had a color, right? The base green color, the first highlight, the second highlight, and then I pin washed them. So now the only thing I have to do is give the track some depth as well, some life to them. And track wash makes it easy. I basically slather the tracks themselves, not the wheels, not the road wheels or running gear, but the tracks themselves with track wash. It has a little bit of a rust color to it, and it darkens the tracks, adds that kind of a rust color to it, and makes it really look nice in the end. And that's it, model done. The only thing I do after the pin wash cleanup and the track wash is after letting it dry, typically overnight, I hit it with a matte varnish, right? I want to get rid of all the gloss or all the sheen to the model, and I hit it with matte varnish. I do it several times because I know the model is going to be handled on the game table. People are going to pick it up and play with it, so I put a lot of matte varnish on it to try to protect it. So here's the final model. Hopefully you can see the things we did. The track wash, the color on the road wheels themselves. You can see the camouflage, black stripes of course, but hopefully you can see that gray in the middle of it. Then you can see the pin wash. You can see the different colors of green in the model itself. This picture here shows a lot of the work that we did and the result. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Again, please subscribe to our channel. We're adding more content all the time. Like this video. It really helps everybody to receive the content. Thanks again.